Alright, so in this video we are going to be welding up the trusses on the axles and getting the steering all welded up and getting the tie rod built and just getting them completely ready to go. So on this rear truss there's 4 spots just there, there, and on the other side as well. I'm not going to weld it to the axle yet. You got to weld the truss up, wait for it to cool, and then you can weld it to the axle, so you don't want it to warp when it's cooling. Same thing for the front. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap here, so I'm going to clamp it down and weld the truss up, not weld it to the axle yet. And same thing with these. I'm going to pull it out of here, weld these up completely before I put them in. So yeah, and then we'll just let those cool down and then weld them to the axle. I also went and got the oxyacetylene torch from Robbie so I can heat up the cast, because you have to heat up the cast before you weld to it or you just won't get good penetration. It won't last. You can kind of weld to cast without doing that, but it won't really last. You got to heat it up to really weld to it. So that's why I got that. And yeah, so I'm just going to set you guys up and start welding these trusses up. Got them all welded up, and you can see it's just tacked to the axle in a couple spots, but you don't want to weld it yet until this completely cools. But that's all welded up, looking pretty good. So happy with how that came out. I also got these all welded up completely. So those are some good welds. Nice and strong. So I'm going to let this completely cool, and then I'll weld it to here, to the axle tubes. I'll weld the truss to the axle, but not to the cast yet, just to the tube. And then I'll come back tomorrow and heat up the cast and weld it to the cast. You want to do it in kind of 3 steps like that, so you don't have any, you don't want this to warp and warp the axle, because it can happen. It'll bend the whole axle. It'll warp so bad because of all the heat you put into it. So you want to do it in kind of stages like that. And you don't want to really weld this to the tube and to the cast, because they kind of cool at different rates. So you'll do it in 3 steps. You weld the truss up, you weld it to the axle shaft, and then you heat up the cast and weld it to the cast. So while this is cooling down, the back one's already cooled. So I'm going to weld the back one to the axle shaft here on both sides, and then I'll come back tomorrow and weld it to the cast. So, and I'll weld around here on the back as well, just so it's super strong and never gonna break. All right, so there it is. Both trusses are welded up and welded to the axle tubes. And then I'll let this cool off completely and come back tomorrow and heat it up and weld it to the cast, to the center section, whatever you want to call it, and also weld the axle tubes into the center section as well. So that's going to be it for today, so I will see you tomorrow. Alright, so it's the next day now, and I just finished getting all the axle cleaned up. Got this ground down for the steering and everything cleaned up. So I'm going to get the torch fired up and heat up these knuckles a little bit and weld that onto it. The high steer kit on. And I'm not going to heat these knuckles up quite as much as I'm going to heat up the housing, because it's smaller and it's thinner, so it doesn't need as much heat. And I don't want to melt the ball joints out of it and everything like that. So I am going to heat them up though, and then we'll move on to the center section. So let's get these heated up. See how it goes. Might have to mess with the settings on my welder a little bit, but for right now I just got it set to pretty high. So I'm gonna give that a go. Alright, and that's what she looks like. That's kind of little, I messed up there. Don't look at that. Over here looks good though. Nice, good, deep welds. And then you can kind of see, I'll probably go over that again. That's where the argon wasn't on, so that's iffy. But where it was welding good, it looks really good. So I'm gonna go do the other side, and then we'll start in the center section. Here's the other side. You can see now that I got the welder settings right, they're looking a lot better. Oh yeah, that's super good. And I kind of cleaned this side up too. See, it looks pretty good, except for a few little spots, but she's gonna hold. It won't come apart. So now I'm gonna work on the center. Thought about pulling the cover and draining it out completely, but I drained it out pretty good, so it should be all right. I'm gonna heat up this whole center section and these a little bit so I can weld in there. And yeah, get it all welded up. And then same thing to the back axle. I went and got more welding wire, and then I reheated it up and finish welded it up. And I put all the heim joints back in, the bolts are in now. So that one's all ready to go. So now I'm gonna heat up the rear axle and do the same thing to that one.
Gosh, that's not scary at all.
Because, yeah, I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
I don't really know. Alright, so I just got finished welding everything up. So now I'm gonna build the tie rod here. And I've got this cool jig for alignments. So it'll get bolted to here, and then you could measure with tape measures to make sure you get the alignment right. And so I can make the tie rod correct. Alright, so I got the jig bolted on there now, and how it works is you take two tape measures, and you run them just like that, and then you can compare, so it's like that. So you need to come closer. Now let's see, 75. That's still wrong. It doesn't have to be perfect because there is adjustment in these heim joints here. Just trying to get it close so I can measure to cut for my. So that's 75 and 74.5 in the front. So it's towed in half an inch right now, which is almost exactly what I want. So now I'm going to measure for my tie rod. And I can fine tune the adjustment later with the heim joints. So I need a piece of tube at 50 and a quarter. 50 and a quarter inches. Now that's gonna be perfect. If it's not, somebody's gonna be mad. Alright, so I got it to where it's towed in a 1/4 inch. So that's where we want it. So now I'm gonna weld this up, and I think that's basically all that's left. So I'm gonna weld it up. Alright guys, got it all finished up. Steering's all done. Everything's all welded up. Front and rear. Rear was super easy. It's all ready for link mounts and everything to go onto it. So that's going to be the end of the video.